not only the beliefs and thoughts that could be impacting us, but also finding out the root cause of that particular belief. So we could also muscle test where that thought originated from, whether that was something that we've picked up along the way, whether that was something that was said to us or said about us at a young age, where we've taken that in as a hypnotic message from adults around us, whether that's somebody else's projection or belief or fear or any of those different pieces. So kinesiology is very powerful in really supporting us to have greater awareness and then also to emotionally release those things, and on a cellular level as well, which is very powerful. And that's done through potentially it all depends on what's testing up at the time, but often there's acupuncture points within the body. We don't use needles or anything, but based on the Chinese meridian system, releasing certain emotions from particular meridians through particular methods there as well, which is quite an amazing tool. But also the best thing I found about life coaching is it really is about asking ourselves powerful questions, because when we ask ourselves a terrible question, such as, why is my life like this? Why can't I ever change this? We end up with a terrible answer, and it only serves to reinforce the issues, such as, oh, well, it's because I'm not good enough, or it's because of X, Y, Z, as opposed to, how can I change my life? Or what do I want to create instead? Or how might I be able to do this differently? And so often changing it from why to how can be very powerful as well. But life coaching really got me understanding the power of asking ourselves really good quality questions, and questioning and challenging the beliefs and thoughts and narratives that we've held about ourselves. For years, I had belief systems such as I'm fat and ugly and no one will love me, literally from 13 to 32, that I absolutely believed wholeheartedly that, you know, I was completely unlovable and not wanted and rejected and discarded. And those beliefs can be so painful from, you know, what they do to ourselves when we're thinking and believing and saying those thoughts to ourselves every day, I believe.
And kinesiology, I would say that it's something new that it's my first time hearing it. And I am glad that I'm glad that I'm hearing something new and being able to educate myself on it. And you mentioned spirituality, and also not only you have, I would say, explored spirituality, I would say quantum physics and the law of attraction. How did these concepts influence your understanding of mental health as someone who had struggled in terms of losing a parent?
Yeah, I believe for myself personally, like the spirituality aspect is one of the belief systems that really supported me, is believing that really everything does happen for a reason, even if we can't understand it at that particular time. And for me, one of the, I guess, higher perspectives that I was able to come to over time, it took me about 2 years to actually arrive at that, was actually believing the thought that this situation had occurred. My mum had passed away, simply like lots of different reasons there, but on the highest perspective, from a soul perspective, was also an agreement that we had so that I could really understand what self-love was. And even with what I experienced in my marriage and the marriage breaking down, it was a very difficult relationship for a long period of time of my life. And really understanding that all of these things in life were happening for me, not to me, to actually become who I truly am today, because I would not have had the desire, I wouldn't have done the research, I wouldn't have become who I am today without those particular experiences. And as difficult as they were, I truly believe adversity has so many blessings in it when we can take the time to and come to terms, obviously, with the initial emotions that we may experience through that adversity, without dishonoring those, but really come to terms and then see, how is this actually helping me? How has this actually been a blessing in my life in some way, shape, or form? Now, that's not to say I wouldn't have my mum back in a heartbeat if that was possible, but clearly that's not possible. And so for me personally, being able to use that as fuel to be able to support and help others has been a really, really powerful thing in my own life as well. And in terms of like law of attraction and quantum physics, really understanding all of those pieces has really helped me to understand how my thoughts are really creating my reality, my own personal reality, through the filters that I'm experiencing life through. And from that level, I really started to understand that all of the relationships, or many of the relationships that I had, were actually a mirror for my deepest woundings, or what I needed to heal within myself. If I was being impacted significantly by what somebody said, if that was a negative thing that they'd said, it was actually understanding, oh, that was my biggest fear. That was my biggest wounding that I believed to be true. And when I healed that within myself, either I was no longer triggered or upset or hurt by others saying that. I could understand that's just coming from their own perspective. But also it changed my own reality, and I tended not to actually attract that anymore in my experience. So that became a very powerful experiment, literally, that I've been running for like the last 15 years, of really starting to look at this and understand how a lot of the things in our life, not necessarily everything. I think we have a soul curriculum where we come into this life to experience certain things that are needed to become who we truly are, or soul lessons, so to speak. That's just my belief system. But I also really can understand and see how so much of what we're experiencing in life comes from the thoughts we tell ourselves repeatedly, and how we think and feel about ourselves, and how critically important self-love is, particularly when it comes to overcoming mental health challenges, well-being, and just our experience of life. Because the pattern I've noticed as humans is we tend to personalize everything that we experience. We make it about ourselves and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just know it's true, certainly in my experience and many of the people that I've worked with over the years, is something happens externally and it's like, oh, well, that's my fault, or I shouldn't have done that, or it means they don't love me, or it means they don't care about me, or all of those particular pieces. And it's not to say that's not sometimes perhaps true, but often it's actually not. And we're making a lot of assumptions based on those things and those narratives.
There's a lot that you unpacked in terms of, I love the fact that you go deeply on in terms of the use of, I would say, use of law of attraction physics in time when it comes to mental health as a whole, because sometimes we usually don't, I would say, correlate mental health with physics. And in a way, I believe that we need to start looking at that way, because it's part of the neurons in terms of the chemical imbalance. Some people believe it's such thing. And I've interviewed some people, and most of them speak about spirituality, how it has helped them in terms of finding their purpose, finding healing through spirituality with their own mental health. And you mentioned the fact that you have a business, and burnout is something that we all go through, whether you're a CEO or you're part of the marketing team or around those things. And my question, it really goes deeply into burnout. Can you tell us, Philip, can you tell us about your experience with burnout and how you approach approach healing from it? Did this experience shape your approach to client care?
Sorry, it just broke up a little bit as you were asking that question. Would you be able to ask it again a second? Sorry.
No problem, no problem. Can you tell us about your experience with burnout and how you approach healing from it? Did this experience shape your approach to client care?
Definitely, the experience of burnout was so revealing in so many ways. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever been through. In the height of my burnout, I literally could only function about 2 hours a day. And that was really challenging. Not only I was still a single mum at the time. My children were still financially dependent on me, and I needed to provide an income as a business owner for my family and keep my business running. And I think the biggest realization I had when I went through burnout was just how much it significantly impacted my mental health and well-being at that time. And it's one of the reasons why I've become so passionate about it and about getting this message out, because what I've noticed is a lot of people that are feeling perhaps anxious or depressed or have been labeled or, being clinically diagnosed as those things often can be misdiagnosed in the fact that there's so much more going on with the body. And when I experienced burnout, I went to my local doctor, I got blood tests done, and she told me I'm fit as a fiddle and, there's nothing wrong with me physically. And so it must be a mental health issue. And thankfully, due to my training, I knew there was so much more going on. It's just that the standardized blood tests don't actually test for a lot of the hormonal deficiencies that have happened, and actually what's going on biologically within the body at a deeper level as well. And so we can have a lot lower cortisol levels, we can have a lot lower hormonal levels simply because of everything that's actually happening with burnout. And with burnout, basically what's going on is our adrenals are operating 24/7 simply because we're living within that fight-flight response. So we're constantly feeling unsafe. And as a result of that is keeping the body in a state of inflammation, in a state of stress that ends up stealing and robbing like a lot of our reproductive hormones, which we need for our energy, testosterone and estrogen and progesterone, to keep us feeling balanced and well within the body. And every single emotion we experience causes a chemical cascade within our body. And Candace Pert also wrote an amazing book called, and now I've lost the name of the book, Molecules of Emotion. That really explains how much our emotions and what we're thinking about, what we're focusing on, and specifically what we're visualizing is actually creating an experience, a biochemical reaction within the body. Now, that can be a really positive experience if it's a positive emotion, or it could be a very stressful experience. And again, as we all know, the body doesn't know the difference between a real event and just a visualized event or an imagined event causing stress within the body. And this was what I've realized, particularly with burnout, was how much of a downward spiral that we can get on, because our physical energy is so minimal at that particular time that the mind becomes hyper-vigilant to what could go wrong or what could hurt us or what could harm us. And it's like an injured deer in the woods. It's not going to be sitting under the tree, kicking back, thinking, oh, it's a beautiful day, look at the blue sky, and feeling the breeze on its face and just chilled and relaxing. If it's injured, if it's compromised in some way, shape or form, that deer is absolutely going to be hypervigilant. Any noise, it's going to be alert to and be and that was what I noticed with my own mind when I went into burnout. I was like, oh my goodness, everyday things like paddleboarding that I would normally love and enjoy and just really, have an experience of thriving in. I was like, oh my God, is a shark going to eat me? Oh my God, like just like my anxiety was through the roof with all being so hyper vigilant. And I knew that that was actually exacerbating the burnout, because until we can kind of quieten the mind and keep things calmer within ourselves,